There are few propositions more enticing to man than the expectation of discovering hidden valuables during an exciting adventure. Of course, I am referring to that glorious and often fabled tale of hidden treasure, that expectation of encountering shimmering gold, glistening jewels, and items of history so profound that they nearly inevitably alter our understanding of the record completely. Such things excite the mind of man in ways that few other things can. He pursues these expeditions with feverish determination, the allure of that which lays hidden beyond the horizon being too great to refuse his indulgence. It pleases me to tell you, dear reader, that I myself have indeed had the unparalleled pleasure and experience of such a tale. Though the tale is one of immense excitement and wonder, I caution you, it is also a tale that begs caution and consideration beforehand. Regardless, the only thing that matches my excitement of such an experience is the telling of it now. It is my sincerest hope and prayer that some important measure of my adventure similarly excites you. My story begins, conventionally enough, in the most blessed city of New Orleans, the same blessed metropolis which I proudly call my home, I myself being one of its inhabitants. I found myself one evening, partaking of the most exquisite foods and spirits one can imagine at a favourite establishment of mine, and in the friendly company of a few others. With our food and drink simmering delightfully in our ever-expanding bellies, we leaned together closer, the conversation taking a rather intriguing turn, one that would change our destinies forever. In spite of his persistence towards the bottle, my host glanced around cautiously, talking quietly. He began to indulge us, in as much confidence such a public place would allow, that he had been hearing rumors at his business of a certain group of men who had happened upon shimmering gold coins in the sand of a beach they had recently occasioned. As our table of chaps listened intently, growing ever quieter and still, our tale-telling host again glanced around for a moment, perhaps taking note of similarly decreased volume of our surroundings, before continuing. His concern with possible nearby, uninvited listening at least temporarily delayed, he further explained that he himself had recently occasioned the beach he mentioned before, and had also found a few stray gold coins. With this disclosure, he carefully reached into his pocket and plopped a couple of said coins onto the table in front of us. Our collective composure became one of awe and astonishment, the likes of which had not visited us the entire evening. He nodded and gestured knowingly around the table that we would restrain ourselves from significant notice of nearby company in the wake of this revelation. He noticed our table attendant approaching and briefly covered the coins with his hand until the attendant departed. Recognizing the necessity for better privacy, he pocketed the coins and beckoned us to follow him to a private adjacent room where we discussed matters further, indulging in more delightful spirits and the occasional cigar. With our curiosities and excitement peaked at a now fevered pitch, the chaps and I turned to our host, after not many minutes, in this comfortable abode of secrets, and inquired to know more of his latest extraordinary exploit. Seeing that his fellows were not completely convinced, he nodded, snuffed out his cigar, and reached into a nearby cabinet, where he subsequently withdrew a volume of parchment rolled up as one of the ancient scrolls. It was then, at that very moment, dear reader, when he gathered us around closer, unrolled the map, and pointed to a specific spot, that I knew our glorious destiny was imminent. For the spot he indicated was one I knew, indeed, one many of us knew, but couldn't immediately believe. For such was our astonishment that such a place not only exist, but be documented to exist in the very parchment laid out before us. Despite a couple of bemoaning guffaws of disbelief, the overwhelming reaction was one of excitement and jubilance. He smiled, then gestured for us to settle down. As our business continued, and discussions vibrated amongst us chums, the obvious question was, what of it? That is, what would we do with such information? Would this map lead us to more of the preciousness which our host and the rumoured chaps had discovered? We waited with bated breath, realizing our scheming would take us well into the night. Our chief benefactor, our beloved host, called the innkeeper, and blessedly secured evening accommodations for the lot of us. Our wives, who were in the habit of knowing our nocturnal itinerary, knew of our state. With our accommodations secured, we returned our attention to the matter at hand, a silly, whimsical adventure, one called it, or a foolhardy errand, another jested. As this night of intriguing debauchery ensued, our thoughtful composure barely maintained amidst the free-flowing spirits. As our eyes drifted back to the map, and the raucous laughter settled into quiet whispers of contemplation, the task before us became transparent in a battery of questions that demanded answers. How would we fund this expedition? How long would it take? What challenges would we face? And more. Our host, lifting a magnifying glass, eyed the map with even closer scrutiny, the men following his gaze, myself among them. I knew immediately what he had become fixated on, the shoals, those dreaded shoals that had to be navigated to reach our prize. They were treacherous and foreboding, those dastardly shoals, having claimed many a ship into their ferocious and unforgiving grasp. They had to be traversed with the uttermost caution, the strictest of calculation, and the greatest of care. Anything less would result in disaster. Little did any of us know that our current quandary would result in the most magnificent, bold, and exciting innovations of our time, and yet we hardly knew it yet. I could see in the glinting gleam of our dear leader's eyes his machinations of mischief and intellectual innovation humming. Just as I thought the night's excitement was contained to bursting, our dear leader launched us into an even higher league of awe that would prove to be the greatest yet. He again reached into the cabinet where he had taken the map, and this time pulled out a series of mechanical drawings. Though not as learned of a man as he, most of us chums could distinguish meaning in the vague outlines in front of us, that which appeared to be a ship. But certainly no ordinary ship, dear reader. No, this ship, this scheme of our master's mind, would be one like no other before it. He, our blessed leader, explained that this was a ship of grand possibilities and ideas. An iron hull encasing the body would prevent the shoals from ripping her asunder. She would have multiple systems of propulsion, sails, oars, and most importantly, a coal-fired steam engine. We listened with awe